Guess who's back? Back in town. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Wow, 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 wow. Well, that was a bit of a faff. I hope some people are going to join this evening. I didn't make the best efforts at announcing this week, but seeing as we're going to be regular from Wednesdays on, there'll be no confusion. Thank you, Sally, for holding the fort. Eeyore! Jed, hello. Hey, Ziggy Wiggy. Oh, Beanie 101230. Hey, Woo. Hi, Alison. Oh, I do like a bit of fennel tea. Hi, Perry. Good evening. I'm sorry for that. I went to start everything up and everything looked nice, and then nothing was loading, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I need to restart the computer. Do I owe you a reply? Do I? I think O is a bit heavy. I think if we're in debt to each other, it creates kind of tension. I will reply. I'm just not the quickest, as a lot of people here probably know. And the computer's like, I'm going to update now. I'm like, okay, that's nice to know. Hello, Carrot Drawers. Nice man. A good evening. Cactelius. Hi, isn't it past my bedtime? It almost certainly is. Yeah, I'm quite tired tonight, so we'll hopefully no falling asleep. No, Dash is Mrs. Dadzig is not keeping the tech gremlins. I'm on my own, dealing with the tech. You don't need to humbly request either. I will get back. I'm just very slow at responding sometimes, much to people's chagrin. The fishes are fishing. The gecko is geckoing. That's good. Good afternoon, is it, Magusa? So I guess you're in the States. Garfina. And the fish. Did we decide what we were going to call them? Eric, Merrick, and Derek? Can you bring Logan a lamp tomorrow? It's very dark in there. In his new apartment. Demanded with your whole chest. No, just the left breast. Jean-Paul and Marguerite. Sub-goals as names. Is that a terrarium? It is Noah J. Yeah, there's a gecko hiding in there. Hello, Kermit985. Hello, indeed. How is everybody this evening or afternoon or morning, depending? Maybe you're in Australia and up bright and early. As you can see, I'm yawning. Yeah, Sally, how are your ribs? We haven't you haven't mentioned it, so presumably it's better because it's a bloody pain in the ass. Biel Mater, good afternoon. Ready for a nap? That sounds great. Just cleaning my room before work. That's very organized. Afternoon, a storm. Noah J, you just got back from a drink and draw. Did some modelling for life drawing too, lots of fun. What's a drink and draw? Is that where you join other people and you sit in a bar and you have drinks and you draw? Sounds right. Cactalius. Not sponded. Was this after a few drinks by any chance, Cactalius? 69 crowns in Burger King? Never. Good evening. Lovely to see you all. I just got home from knitting. Oh, nice. Nice babush toad. That sounds like good as well. That's awesome, Noah J. You're going to drive a bus? You're driving a bus? Hang on. Why are you driving buses, Sally? Are you doing a bus license? What's going on? That sounds great. Noise main. That's lovely. Drink wine and do pottery. Do they go hand in hand? Makes the glass a bit slippy there, doesn't it? That's what she said. Feeling quite chipper. Lost my voice today, but otherwise I've had a great day. Oh dear. Illness related, or were you partying too hard? What was the voice loss all about? Got back from the beach and gardening. Shut up. Where are you on the beach? Where are you that it's warm enough that you're on the beach? With a bus? Well, I know, but like, But why are you driving a bus? There's also a sip and stitch where you knit together and have cocktails. This all sounds very wholesome. I like it. I don't even have a license. You're just going to nick a bus and ride around. Sod webworm. Yes, I think that's it. Mark Cram will be our sod webworm. It happens quite a lot. Does it really? You need some vocal training. I wonder what that's from. Gargling salt water will help, I think. Jade, look at you. Get in there with that streak. Loves it. What's happening here now? Oh, all right. After sword practice, getting to food, 2 chicken burgers for the price of 1. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Kind of sponsored. Yes. Got to get the protein, carbs in wherever you can. Struggles of a bard, I'm afraid. Oh dear. Okay. Get it. In cat butts, you're cooking. That's cool. Okay, now I'm hungry. Yes, it's the problem. All right, let me go through this list because I think we've got on our bosom counter. Where do we get? We ended up with 27. Was that right? Did we decide 27 or not? You have an offer. 10 cozy evenings. Yes. Need to note the paper down. Bosom. Is there because I think we were 25 and then we compromised at 27 or something. Okay, so Adventures Hunt File. I don't think we're ever going to come back to that. I got a bit bored, I have to say. That was our very first one. So I'm going to go through because I would like to. The Gold Bug. I don't think we've read a Gold Bug, have we? I know. I just noticed because I'm reading. I didn't know there was a bosom emote. 26 or 27. Very good, Cactalius. The Gold Bug is an adventure story. All right, so we haven't done that then. Balloon Hoax. The Balloon Hoax, 71. I think we might have read that. Just try and clean it up here a little bit. Bosom. Or maybe we didn't read the Balloon Hoax. There we go. Yeah, we don't need slow. Balloon Hoax, question mark. I'm going to put that question mark. Von Kempelen and his discovery, question mark. I don't think we read that. Mesmeric Revolution, the facts in the case of M. Valdemar. Rawr. The 1002nd Tale of Scheherazade. That's from 1001 Arabian Nights, isn't it? Voldemort is kind of hard as a name. It's Valdemar. All right. The Purloined Letter. Rue Morgue. We've read. The Island of Fae. We read that last time. Oh no, we were reading it last time, and then it was shit. It was cutting out all the time, wasn't it? No, no, we did the other half of Marie Roget, but I think you missed it last week, Alison, unfortunately. Thank you, Draconi Manaveri. Um, um, all right. So here's my idea because I was so much enjoying the island of Fae, and hopefully tonight the Fae will be with us. Maybe they were blessed. Um, we didn't find out who the murderer was. No, we didn't. Much to my chagrin. That's right, barbarian. And so we do the island of Fae, and we'll do um, the gold bug, and then we'll see how we go. Because the facts in the case of M. Valdemar is not particularly long either. Doesn't he just, Alison? Doesn't he just? How about a poem? Should mark the poems bar, shouldn't I? We've definitely done the crow. No, not the crow. The raven, even. Oh, I can't remember now. The bells. The bells, Esmeralda. Um, the raven whiz done. Bertie moaning with closed eyes as he thrusts. Which Bertie? What are you talking about? Goodness me, Cacteria. Um, hang on, what? Haunted Palace? Yeah, but how long is it? You did request it before, didn't you? Go, do, do, do. Oh, we read the oval portrait. Do, 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 do. Oh, it's a poem. Ah, yes, 959. Okay, 9. Yeah, all right. But before we do that, I'd like to read the hymn because it caught my eye just now. Are we ready? It isn't that long, and it's going to come right after this. At morn, at noon, at twilight dim, Maria, thou hast heard my hymn. In joy and woe, in good and ill, Mother of God, be with me still. When the hours flew brightly by, and not a cloud obscured the sky, my soul, lest it should truant be, thy grace did guide to thine and thee. Now when storms of fate o'ercast darkly my present and my past, let my future radiant shine with sweet hopes of thee and thine. Is your dada? Hello, Dadzig, and chat. Yes, indeed. Kind of sus. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. He does sound guilty ass, doesn't he? That he's a suspect, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, if he ain't done something wrong, like, I'd be lying to himself, innit? Do you know what I mean? The Haunted Palace. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head. In the monarch's thoughts' dominion it stood there, never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof did float and flow. All this was in the olden time long ago, and every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day along the ramparts plumed and pallid, a winged odour went away. Wanderers in that happy valley through two luminous windows saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about a throne where sitting Porphyrogeny, in state his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen, and all with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing, 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 and sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes whose sweet duty was but to sing, in voices of surpassing beauty, to wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate. And round about his home the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the old time entombed. And travellers now, within that valley, through the red litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody. While like a ghastly rapid river, through the pale door a hideous throng rush out for ever and laugh, but smile no more. Maybe we could do some. Maybe we could do some reading in rat eye. I don't know. Maybe we could around the hearth. Get a rug. Everyone gets their drinks. Lovely suggestion indeed. I like that very much. I'll mark that up, mind. Not that I wouldn't read it again. The Conquered Worm. I reckon we read that as well. All right, we're going to go back to the Island of Fae. 285. Because I liked it so much. And we're going to try it again. And it's not that long. Fingers crossed. Oh yeah, I mean if you get an ad blocker, if you use Firefox, you can get an ad blocker thing as well. And I watch YouTube all the time now. No adverts. Also have an ad blocker app on my phone. Play YouTube. No adverts. Max benefit, guys. All right. Let me pull up here. You can also crack your phone for no ads on certain mainstream apps. I did not know that. King Pest. Maybe we can make rain noises next time. Or I could just move the fish tank a little closer and you can hear the water. How are we doing? Move you in. The island of Fae. Nullus enim locus sine genio est. Servius. La musique. That was a good start, wasn't it? Let's try that again, shall we? La musique, says Marmontel in those contes marrons, which in all our translations we have insisted upon calling moral tales, as if in mockery of their spirit. La musique est le seul des talents y jouissant de lui-même, tous les autres veulent de témoins. He here confounds the pleasure derivable from sweet sounds with the capacity for creating them. No more than any other talent is that for music susceptible of complete enjoyment, where there is no second party to appreciate its exercise, and it is only in common with other talents that it produces effects which may be fully enjoyed in solitude. The idea which the raconteur has either failed to entertain clearly or has sacrificed in its expression to his national love of point is, doubtless, the very tenable one that the higher order of music is the most thoroughly estimated when we are exclusively alone. The proposition in this form will be admitted at once by those who love the lyre for its own sake and for its spiritual uses. But there is one pleasure still within the reach of fallen mortality, and perhaps only one, which owes even more than does music to the accessory sentiment of seclusion. I mean the happiness experienced in the contemplation of natural scenery. In truth, the man who would behold aright the glory of God upon earth must in solitude behold that glory, to me, at least, the presence not of human life only, but of life in any other form than that of the green things which grow upon the soil and are voiceless, is a stain upon the landscape, is at war with the genius of the scene. I love indeed to regard the dark valleys and the grey rocks and the waters that silently smile and the forests that sigh in uneasy slumbers and the proud watchful mountains that look down upon all. I love to regard these as themselves but the colossal members of one vast animate and sentient whole, a whole whose form, that of the sphere, is the most perfect and most inclusive of all, whose path is among associate planets, whose weak handmaiden is the moon, whose immediate sovereign is the sun, whose life is eternity, whose thought is that of a god, whose enjoyment is knowledge, whose destinies are lost in immensity, whose cognizance of ourselves is akin with our own cognizance of the animalculae which infest the brain, a being which we, in consequence, regard as purely inanimate and material, which in the same manner as these animalculae must regard us. Our telescopes and our mathematical investigations assure us on every hand, notwithstanding the cant of the more ignorant of the priesthood, that space, and therefore that bulk, is an enormous consideration in the eyes of the Almighty. The cycles in which the stars move are those best adapted for the evolution without collision of the greatest possible number of bodies. The forms of those bodies are accurately such as, within a given surface, to include the greatest possible amount of matter, while the surfaces themselves are so disposed as to accommodate a denser population than could be accommodated on the same surfaces otherwise arranged. Nor is it any argument against bulk being an object with God that space itself is infinite, for there may be an infinity of matter to fill it. And since we clearly see that the endowment of matter with vitality is a principle, indeed, as far as our judgments extend, the leading principle in the operations of deity, it is scarcely logical to imagine it confined to the regions of the minute, where we daily trace it, and not extending to those of the august. As we find cycle within cycle without end, yet all revolving around one far distant centre, which is the Godhead, may we not analogically suppose, in the same manner, life within life, the less within the greater, and all within the Spirit divine? In short, we are madly erring through self-esteem in believing man, in either his temporal or future destinies, to be of more moment in the universe than that vast clod of the valley which he tills and contempts, and to which he denies a soul for no more profound reason than that he does not behold it in operation. These fancies and such as these have always given to my meditations among the mountains and the forests, by the rivers and the ocean, a tinge of what the everyday world would not fail to term fantastic. My wanderings amongst such scenes have been many and far-reaching and often solitary, and the interest with which I have strayed through many a dim, deep valley, or gazed into the reflected heaven of many a bright lake, has been an interest greatly deepened by the thought that I have strayed and gazed alone. What flippant Frenchman was it who'd said, in allusion to the well-known work of Zimmermann, that la solitude est une belle chose, mais il faut quelqu'un pour vous dire que la solitude est une belle chose? The epigram cannot be gainsaid, but the necessity is a thing that does not exist. It was during one of my lonely journeyings amid a far distant region of mountain locked within mountain, and sad rivers and melancholy tarns writhing or sleeping within all, that I chanced upon a certain rivulet and island. I came upon them suddenly in the leafy June, and threw myself upon the turf beneath the branches of an unknown odorous shrub, that I might doze as I contemplated the scene. I felt that thus only should I look upon it, such was the character of phantasm which it wore. On all sides, save to the west where the sun was about sinking, arose the verdant walls of the forest. The little river, which turned sharply in its course and was thus immediately lost to sight, seemed to have no exit from its prison, but to be absorbed by the deep green foliage of the trees to the east, while in the opposite quarter, and so it appeared to me as I lay at length and glanced upward, there poured down noiselessly and continuously into the valley a rich golden and crimson waterfall from the sunset fountains of the sky. About midway in the short vista which my dreamy vision took in, one small circular island, profusely verdured, reposed upon the bosom of the stream. So blended bank and shadow there that each seemed pendulous in air. So mirror-like was the glassy water that it was scarcely possible to say at what point upon the slope of the emerald turf its crystal dominion began. My position enabled me to include in a single view both the eastern and western extremities of the islet, and I observed a singly marked difference in their aspects. The latter was all one radiant harem of garden beauties. It glowed and blushed beneath the eye of the slant sunlight, and fairly laughed with flowers. The grass was short, springy, sweet-scented, and asphodel interspersed. The trees were lithe, mirthful, erect, bright, slender, and graceful of eastern figure and foliage, with bark smooth, glossy, and party-coloured. There seemed a deep sense of life and joy about all. And although no airs blew from out the heavens, yet everything had motion through the gentle sweepings to and fro of innumerable butterflies that might have been mistaken for tulips with wings. The other, or eastern end of the isle was whelmed in the blackest shade. A sombre yet beautiful and peaceful gloom here pervaded all things. The trees were dark in colour and mournful in form and attitude, wreathing themselves into sad, solemn, and spectral shapes that conveyed ideas of mortal sorrow and untimely death. The grass wore the deep tint of the cypress, and the heads of its blades hung droopingly, and hither and thither among it were many small unsightly hillocks, low and narrow and not very long, that had the aspect of graves, but were not, although over and all about them the rue and the rosemary clambered. The shade of the trees fell heavily upon the water, and seemed to bury itself therein, impregnating the depths of the element with the darkness. I fancied that each shadow, as the sun descended lower and lower, separated itself sullenly from the trunk that gave it birth, and thus became absorbed by the stream, while other shadows issued momently from the trees, taking the place of their predecessors thus entombed. This idea, having once seized upon my fancy, greatly excited it, and I lost myself forthwith in reverie. If ever island were enchanted, said I to myself, this is it. This is the haunt of the few gentle fays who remain from the wreck of the race. Are these green tombs theirs, or do they yield up their sweet lives as mankind yield up their own? In dying, do they not rather waste away mournfully, rendered unto God, little by little, their existence, as these trees render up shadow after shadow, exhausting their substance unto dissolution? What the wasting trees to water that imbibes its shade, growing thus blacker by what it preys upon? May not the life of the Fay be to the death which engulfs it? And thus I mused, with half-shut eyes, while the sun sank rapidly to rest, and eddying currents careered around and round the island, bearing upon their bosom large, dazzling white flakes of the bark of the sycamore flakes, which, in their multiform positions upon the water, a quick imagination might have converted into anything it pleased. While I thus mused, it appeared to me that the form of one of those very fays about whom I had been pondering made its way slowly into the darkness from out of the light at the western end of the island. She stood erect in a singly fragile canoe, and urged it with the mere phantom of an oar. While within the influence of the lingering sunbeams, her attitude seemed indicative of joy, but sorrow deformed it as she passed within the shade. Slowly she glided along, and at length rounded the islet and re-entered the region of light. The revolution which has just been made by the Fae, continued I musingly, is the cycle of the brief year of her life. She has floated through her winter, and through her summer she is a year nearer unto death. For I did not fail to see that, as she came into the shade, her shadow fell from her, and was swallowed up in the dark water, making its blackness more black. And again the boat appeared, and the Fae. But about the attitude of the latter there was more of care and uncertainty, and less of elastic joy, and she floated again from the light and into the gloom, which deepened momently, and again her shadow fell from her into the ebony water and became absorbed into its blackness, and again she made the circuit of the island, while the sun rushed down to his slumbers, and at each issuing into the light there was more sorrow about her person, while it grew feebler and far fainter and more indistinct, and at each passage into the gloom there fell from her darker shade, which became whelmed in a shadow more black. But at length, when the sun had utterly departed, the Fay, now the mere ghost of her former self, went disconsolately with her boat into the region of the ebony flood, and that she issued thence at all I cannot say. The darkness fell over all things, and I beheld her magical figure no more. Hang on a second now with the bosoms. I think we started on 27. Was there two in that story? Did I miss the first one? I think we're only on 28, mind. Two. We're at 29. Woo! Right. The bosom counter got ramped up tonight. I mean, if you're going to be in a canoe, you might as well stand erect. Hello, Queenie. Is that a canoe in my pocket, or am I just pleased to see you? Woof. Um, what's the tea? Fennel. Love fennel tea. What? What? Some muses tissant. I don't think you're supposed to stand in the canoe, but whatever you say, King. Listen, um, I do like that bush toad, indeed. Some people stand in canoes. Um, it's not as anisey as Anise and Caraway, but it's in that region. All right. So what was the story? We were going to go for gold digging, wasn't it? Ooh, that's 30 pages, mind. I think we'll leave the gold. Well, I think we'll leave gold bug for next time. Some people standing. What's the American way to make tea? Haunted Palace. What do you mean? I read the Haunted Palace. But Rumi, I did. I read it. Microwave? No, shut up. What? What do you mean microwave? No, you're not dumb. You got a lot to think about right now. Did you not hear me read it, or was it just it rushed past you? Hot water from the coffee pot, tea bag, whoosh. Americans microwave water with a tea bag. I'm pained. I'm pained. We got to install microwave ovens, refrigerators, we were raised that way. Yeah, well now you know. Good kettles, exactly. I don't even do that anymore, Jade. I don't have a microwave anymore. Decided not to have one. No one in America uses kettles. What? Um, I'm stepping away from this. Oh, that's what I was going to read. The 1002nd Tale. No, the facts. The facts in the case of M. Valdemar. That's what I wanted to read. And next time we'll read the Goldberg, yo. I'll make a little. I'll make a little. I'll make a little line like that. Okay. Little arrow. Now I know what to get you for Christmas. You're gonna get a water kettle. It has so many uses, the water kettle. For example, when I'm making soup, right? Because it heats water much more quickly than if you put it on the hob. So um you can heat up your water and then you bang it on your veg and shit. Much quicker. Water kettle's great for anything. Yeah, hot water bottle. Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't put boiling water in a hot water bottle. A water bottle. Water. I'm going to put water bottle. Hot water in a water bottle. Water bottle. My little movies. Um, where are we? The facts in the case of 96. As the beginning of the book. Oh dear. What happened with the OG ham bone? Do you want to share, or is it too uh too scary? Yeah. Well, because they're rubber, aren't they? So you shouldn't put anything that's too hot. Um, what I do is I use the hot water from the tap, and then I top up with a bit of hot from the kettle, just a little bit. And you should also squeeze the air out. No, if nobody's ever. Oh, you put. What happened? Improperly treated metal. Shut up! No way. That's awful. Oh, but you had a stovetop one. We're talking about electric ones you plug in. Switch. Pours water. 2 minutes. Bish bosh. Your mum was so mad. Hey Nadine. Hello everybody. Is you at the clinic or are you not working now? The fish is the fishing. Do I give Radzig a mullet in my drawing? Yeah, go for it. Give him one of those modern mullets that are a bit more popular now with the Aussie boys. You know what I'm talking about? It's not just the bit at the back. It kind of comes around the side here a little bit as well, and it's kind of like more like a mohawk thing, and a bit shorter here on the side. Anyway, well, you need to look at the amperage, don't you? All right, like a horse mullet, maybe. Lights flicker when I try to use the microwave. Jesus Christ. There we go. $20. Exactly. We shall read. The facts in the case of M. Valdemar. Of course, I shall not pretend to consider it any matter for wonder that the extraordinary case of L. Valdemar was. I don't know what my mouth's at tonight. Maybe I haven't done enough talking today. Do heating water by hand? Nadine, are you some kind of magician? With the power of the air, I have heaty water. Let me try reading again. I haven't even been drinking. Maybe that's the problem. Of course, I shall not pretend to consider it any matter for wonder that the extraordinary case of M. Valdemar has excited discussion. It would have been a miracle had it not, especially under the circumstances. Through the desire of all parties concerned to keep the affair from the public, at least for the present, or until we had further opportunities for investigation through our endeavours to effect this, a garbled or exaggerated account made its way into society and became the source of many unpleasant misrepresentations, and very naturally of a great deal of disbelief. It is now rendered necessary that I give the facts, as far as I can comprehend them myself. They are succinctly these. My attention for the last 3 years had been repeatedly drawn to the subject of mesmerism, and about 9 months ago it occurred to me quite suddenly that in a series of experiments made hitherto, there had been a very remarkable and most unaccountable omission. No person had as yet been mesmerized in articulo mortis. It remained to be seen, first, whether in such condition there existed in the patient any susceptibility to the magnetic influence; secondly, whether, if any existed, it was impaired or increased by the condition; thirdly, to what extent, or for how long a period, the encroachments of death might be arrested by the process. There were other points to be ascertained, but these most excited my curiosity, the last in especial, from the immensely important character of its consequences. In looking around, thank you, Barbarian, in looking around for some subject by whose means I might test these particulars, I was brought to think of my friend M. Ernest Valdemar, the well-known compiler of the Bibliotheca Forensica and author, under the nom de plume of Issachar Marx, of the Polish versions of Wallenstein and Gargantua. M. Valdemar, who has resided principally at Harlem, New York, since the year of 1839, is, or was, particularly noticeable for the extreme spareness of his person, his lower limbs much resembling those of John Randolph, and also for the whiteness of his whiskers, in violent contrast to the blackness of his hair, the latter, in consequence, being very generally mistaken for a wig. His temperament was markedly nervous, and rendered him a good subject for mesmeric experiments. On one or two occasions, or three, I had put him to sleep with little difficulty, but was disappointed in other results which his peculiar constitution had naturally led me to anticipate. His will was at no period positively or thoroughly under my control, and in regard to clairvoyance, I could accomplish with him nothing to be relied upon. I always attributed my failure at these points to the disordered state of his health. For some months previous to my becoming acquainted with him, his physicians had declared him in a confirmed phthisis. It was his custom, indeed, to speak calmly of his approaching dissolution, as a matter of neither to be avoided nor regretted. When the ideas to which I have alluded first occurred to me, it was of course very natural that I should think of M. Valdemar. I knew the steady philosophy of the man too well to apprehend any scruples from him, and he had no relatives in America who were likely to interfere. I spoke to him frankly upon the subject, and to my surprise his interest seemed vividly excited. I say to my surprise, for although he had always yielded his persons freely to my experiments, he had never before given me any tokens of sympathy with what I did. His disease was of the character which would admit of exact calculation in respect to the epoch of its termination in death, and it was finally arranged between us that he would send for me about 24 hours before the period announced by his physicians as that of his decease. It is now rather more than 7 months since I received from M. Valdemar himself the subjoined note. Dear Mr. P., you may as well come now. D and F are agreed that I cannot hold out beyond tomorrow midnight, and I think they have hit the time very nearly. Valdemar. I received this note within half an hour after it was written, and in 15 minutes more I was in the dying man's chamber. I had not seen him for 10 days, and was appalled by the fearful alteration which the brief interval had wrought in him. His face wore a leaden hue, the eyes were utterly lustreless, and the emaciation was so extreme that the skin had been broken through by the cheekbones. His expectoration was excessive. The pulse was barely perceptible. He retained, nevertheless, in a very remarkable manner, both his mental power and a certain degree of physical strength. He spoke with distinctness, took some palliative medicines without aid, and when I entered the room was occupied in penciling memoranda in a pocketbook. He was propped up in the bed by pillows. Doctors D and F were in attendance. After pressing Valdemar's hand, I took these gentlemen aside, and obtained from them a minute account of the patient's condition. The left lung had been for 18 months in a semi-osseous or cartilaginous state, and was of course entirely useless for all purposes of vitality. The right, in its upper portion, was also partially, if not thoroughly, ossified, while the lower region was merely a mass of purulent tubercles running into one another. Several extensive perforations existed, and at one point permanent adhesion to the ribs had taken place. These appearances in the right lobe were of comparatively recent date. The ossification had proceeded with very unusual rapidity. No sign of it had been discovered a month before, and the adhesion had only been observed during the 3 previous days. Independently of the phthisis, the patient was suspected of aneurysm of the aorta, but on this point the osseous symptoms rendered an exact diagnosis impossible. It was the opinion of both physicians that M. Valdemar would die about midnight on the morrow, Sunday. It was then 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. On quitting the invalid's bedside to hold conversation with myself, Dr. D and F had bidden him a final farewell. It had not been their intention to return, but at my request they agreed to look in upon the patient about 10 the next night. When they had gone, I spoke freely with M. Valdemar on the subject of his approaching dissolution, as well as more particularly of the experiment proposed. He still professed himself quite willing and even anxious to have it made, and urged me to commence it at once. A male and a female nurse were in attendance, but I did not feel myself altogether at liberty to engage in a task of this character with no more reliable witnesses than these people in case of sudden accident might prove. I therefore postponed operations until about 8 the next night, when the arrival of a medical student with whom I had some acquaintance, Mr. Theodore L., relieved me from further embarrassment. It had been my design originally to wait for the physicians, but I was induced to proceed first by the urgent entreaties of M. Valdemar, and secondly by my convictions that I had not a moment to lose, as he was evidently sinking fast. Mr. L. was so kind as to accede to my desire that he would take notes of all that occurred, and it is from his memoranda that what I now have to relate is, for the most part, either condensed or copied verbatim. It wanted about 5 minutes of 8 when, taking the patient's hand, I begged him to state, as distinctly as he could to Mr. L., whether he, M. Valdemar, was entirely willing that I should make the experiment of mesmerizing him in this condition. He replied feebly, yet quite audibly, "Yes, I wish to be mesmerized," adding immediately afterward, "I fear you have deferred it too long." While he spoke thus, I commenced the passes which I had already found most effectual in subduing him. He was evidently influenced with the first lateral stroke of my hand across his forehead, but although I exerted all my efforts, no further perceptible effect was induced until some minutes after 10, when Doctors D and F called, according to appointment. I explained to them in a few words what I designed, and as they opposed no objection, saying that the patient was already in the death agony, I proceeded without hesitation, exchanging, however, the lateral passes for downward ones, and directing my gaze entirely into the right eye of the sufferer. By this time his pulse was imperceptible, and his breathing was stertorous, and at intervals of half a minute. This condition was nearly unaltered for a quarter of an hour. At the expiration of this period, however, a natural, although a very deep sigh escaped from the bosom of the dying man, and the stertorous breathing ceased. That is to say, its stertorousness was no longer apparent. The intervals were undiminished. The patient's extremities were of an icy coldness. At 5 minutes before 11, I perceived unequivocal signs of the mesmeric influence. The glassy roll of the eye was changed for that expression of uneasy inward examination which is never seen except in cases of sleepwalking, and which it is quite impossible to mistake. With a few rapid lateral passes, I made the lids quiver, as in incipient sleep, and with a few more I closed them altogether. I was not satisfied, however, with this, but continued the manipulations vigorously and with the fullest exertion of the will, until I had completely stiffened the limbs of the slumberer, after placing them in a seemingly easy position. The legs were at full length, the arms were nearly so, and reposed on the bed at moderate distance from the loins. The head was very slightly elevated. When I had accomplished this, it was fully midnight, and I requested the gentleman present to examine M. Valdemar's condition. After a few experiments, they admitted him to be in an unusually perfect state of mesmeric trance. The curiosity of both physicians was greatly excited. Dr. D resolved at once to remain with the patient all night, while Dr. F took leave with a promise to return at daybreak. Mr. L and the nurses remained. We left M. Valdemar entirely undisturbed until about 3 o'clock in the morning, when I approached him and found him in precisely the same condition as when Dr. F went away. That is to say, he lay in the same position, the pulse was imperceptible, the breathing was gentle, scarcely noticeable unless through the application of a mirror to the lips. The eyes were closed naturally, and the limbs were as rigid and as cold as marble. Still, the general appearance was certainly not that of death. As I approached M. Valdemar, I made a kind of half effort to influence his right arm into pursuit of my own, as I passed the latter gently to and fro above his person. In such experiments with this patient, I had never perfectly succeeded before, and assuredly I had little thought of exceeding now, but to my astonishment, his arm very readily, although feebly, followed every direction I signed it with mine. I determined to hazard a few words of conversation. Waldemar, I said, are you asleep? He made no answer, but I perceived a tremor about the lips, and was thus induced to repeat the question again and again. At its third repetition, his whole frame was agitated by a very slight shivering. The eyelids unclosed themselves so far as to display a white line of ball. The lips moved sluggishly, and from between them, in a barely audible whisper, issued the words, "Yes, asleep. Do not wake me. Let me die so." I here felt the limbs and found them as rigid as ever. The right arm, as before, obeyed the direction of my hand. I questioned the sleepwalker again. "Do you still feel the pain in the breast, Waldemar?" The answer now was immediate and even less audible than before. "No pain. I am dying." I did not think it advisable to disturb him further just then, and nothing more was said or done until the arrival of Dr. F., who came a little before sunrise and expressed unbounded astonishment at finding the patient still alive. After feeling the pulse and applying a mirror to the lips, he requested me to speak to the sleepwalker again. I did so, saying, Waldemar, do you still sleep?" As before, some minutes elapsed ere a reply was made, and during the interval the dying man seemed to be collecting his energies to speak. At my fourth repetition of the question, he said very faintly, almost inaudibly, "Yes, still asleep, dying." It was now the opinion, or rather the wish, of the physicians that Waldemar should be suffered to remain undisturbed in his present appearance, apparently tranquil condition until death should supervene, and this, it was generally agreed, must now take place within a few minutes. I concluded, however, to speak to him once more, and merely repeated my previous question. While I spoke, there came a marked change over the countenance of the sleepwalker. The eyes rolled themselves slowly open, the pupils disappearing upwardly. The skin generally assumed a cadaverous hue, resembling not so much parchment as white paper, and the circular hectic spots, which hitherto had been strongly defined in the centre of each cheek, went out at once. I use this expression because the suddenness of their departure put me in mind of nothing so much as the extinguishment of a candle by the puff of breath. The upper lip, at the same time, writhed itself away from the teeth, which it had previously covered completely, while the lower jaw, with an inaudible jerk, leaving the mouth wildly extended and disclosing in full view the swollen and blackened tongue. I presume that no member of the party then present had been unaccustomed to deathbed horrors, but so hideous beyond conception was the appearance of El Valdemar at this moment that there was a general shrinking back from the region of the bed. I now feel that I have reached a point of this narrative at which every reader will be startled into positive disbelief. It is my opinion, however, simply to proceed. There was no longer simply the faintest sign of vitality in M. Valdemar, and, concluding him to be dead, we consigned him to the charge of the nurses, when a strong vibratory motion was observable in the tongue. This continued for perhaps a minute. At the expiration of this period, there issued from its distended and motionless jaws a voice, such as it would be madness in me to attempt describing. There are indeed 2 or 3 epithets which might be considered as applicable to it in part. I might say, for example, that the sound was harsh, and broken, and hollow, but the hideous thing is indescribable for the simple reason that no similar sounds have ever jarred upon the ear of humanity. There were 2 particulars, nevertheless, which I thought then and still think might fairly be stated as characteristic of the intonation, as well as adapted to convey some idea of its unearthly peculiarity. In the first place, the voice seemed to reach our ears, at least mine, from a vast distance, or from some deep cavern within the earth. In the second place, it impressed me, I fear indeed that it would be impossible to make myself comprehend, as a gelatinous or glutinous matter impress the sense of touch. I have spoken of both sound and of voice. I mean to say that the sound was one of distinct, of even wonderfully, thrillingly distinct syllabification. And Valdemar spoke, obviously in reply to the question I had proposed to him a few minutes before. I had asked him, it will be remembered, if he still slept. He now said, yes, no, I have been sleeping, and now I am dead. No person present even affected to deny or attempt to repress the unutterable shuddering horror which these few words, thus uttered, were as well calculated to convey. Mr. L., the student, swooned. The nurses immediately left the chamber and could not be induced to return. My own impressions I would not pretend to render intelligible to the reader. For nearly an hour we busied ourselves silently, without the utterance of a word, in endeavours to revive Mr. L. When he came to himself, we addressed ourselves again to the investigation of M. Valdemar's condition. It remained in all respects as I have last described it, with the exception that the mirrors no longer afforded the evidence of respiration. An attempt to draw blood from the arm failed. I should mention, too, that this limb was no further subject to my will. I endeavoured in vain to make it to follow the direction of my hand. The only real indication, indeed, of the mesmeric influence was now found in the vibratory movement of the tongue which I addressed M. Valdemar a question. He seemed to be making an effort to reply, but no longer suffered volition. To queries put to him by any other person than myself, he seemed utterly insensible, although I endeavoured to place each member of the company in mesmeric rapport with him. I believe that I have now related all that is necessary to the understanding of the sleepwalker's state at this epoch. Other nurses were procured, and at 10 o'clock I left the house in company with the two physicians and Mr. L. In the afternoon we all called again to see the patient. His condition remained precisely the same. We had now some discussion as to the propriety and feasibility of awakening him, but we had little difficulty in agreeing that no good purpose could be served by so doing. It was evident that, so far, death, or what is usually termed death, had been arrested by the mesmeric process. It seemed clear to us all that to awaken M. Valdemar would be merely to ensure his instant, or at least his speedy, dissolution. From this period until the close of last week, an interval of nearly 7 months, we continued to make daily we continue to make, dearie me. It seemed clear to me, to all of us, that to awaken M. Valdemar would be merely to ensure his instant, or at least speedy, dissolution. From this period until the close of last week, an interval of nearly 7 months, we continued to make daily calls at M. Valdemar's house, accompanied now and then by medical and other friends. All this time the sleepwalker remained exactly as I have last described him. The nurse's attentions were continual. It was on Friday that we finally resolved to make the experiment of awakening or attempting to wake him, and it is the perhaps unfortunate result of this latter experiment which has given rise to so much discussion in private circles, to so much of what I cannot help thinking unwarranted popular feelings. For the purpose of relieving El Maldemar from the mesmeric trance, I made use of the customary passes. These, for a time, were unsuccessful. The first indication of revival was offered by a partial descent of the iris. It was observed, at least especially remarkable, that this lowering of the pupil was accompanied by a profuse outletting of yellow ichor from beneath the lids, of a pungent and highly offensive odour. It was now suggested that I should attempt to influence the patient's arm as herefore too. I made the attempt and failed. Dr. F. then initiated a desire to have me put a question. I did so as follows. M. Valdemar, can you explain to us what are your feelings or wishes now? There was an instant return of the hectic circles on the cheeks, the tongue quivering, or rather rolled violently in the mouth, although the jaws and lips remained rigid as ever. And at length the same hideous voice which I have already described broke forth. For God's sake, quick, quick, put me to sleep, or quick, waken me, quick. I say to you that I am dead. I was thoroughly unnerved, and for an instant remained undecided what to do. At first I made an endeavour to recompose the patient, but failing in this through total abeyance of the will, I retraced my steps and was earnestly struggled to awaken him. In this attempt I soon saw that I should be successful, at least I soon fancied that my success would be complete, and I am sure that all in the room were prepared to see the patient awaken. What really occurred, however, it is quite impossible to add to any human. For what really occurred, however, it is quite impossible that any human being could have been prepared. As I rapidly made the mesmeric passes amid ejaculations of dead, dead, absolutely bursting from the tongue and not from the lips of the sufferer, his whole frame at once, within the space of a single minute or less, shrunk, crumbled, absolutely rotted away beneath my hands. Upon the bed, before that whole company, there lay a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, of detestable putrescence. Yes, Babush Toad, they kept a dead body for over half a year. Putrescence. Well, that was gross. All right, gang. Dadzig's tired tonight. We're going to find one more short one glued to the screen. Pseudo, pseudo, pseudo. Do we have another dog that likes listening to me? Because Alison's dog likes listening as well. Putrescence, the new fragrance by Balenciaga. Yeah, well, not far off the truth, though, is it? Oh, that's why. Same dog, okay. Touch your nose, it's 2022, and that's a good time to be touching your nose face. Nuit. Oh, yeah. Um, Nuit. Isn't that book heavy? It's alright, it's a paperback, but it is heavy. Over 1,000 pages. There's one story called Diddling. Yo, diddly, gotta bag it up, bag it up. Ooh. Did we read Metzengerstein? Diddling and a ziggling down in the mountain way. 672. I think we did. The pendulum is in there, yes. We've read the pendulum though. Um, what the hell happens in Metzengerstein? Are we sure? This does not look familiar. I just don't remember saying Count Berlifitzing. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember this. I think I wanted to read it, but never got there. Any more bosoms seems to be left? When did you leave? We got one more on that last story, so we're up to 30. Yeah, we got one more bosom from that last story. I don't believe I read the Metzengerstein. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't want to be arguing, but I just don't remember it. I'm going to put a question mark next to it. I'll go through. We did read Ligeia Morella, I think. Uh, 3 Sundays in a week. We read that. Devil in the Belfry. Seven four eight. Bloody hell. Narrative of Gordon Pym's a long story. Don't have to go on. Oh, jeez. It's a novel. I'm in the walls. You got Monte Cristo. Oh, God, please don't. All right. Um, we're going to read Lionizing. It looks weird. And we're going to finish after this for tonight. And the next time, what did I say we're going to read? The Gold Bug. Leopard gecko is in the terrarium. Very shy leopard gecko. Never yet managed to coax it out. Garfina indeed. Here we go. Lionizing. All people went upon their 10 toes in wild wonderment. Bishop Hall's Satires. I am, that is to say, I was a great man, but I'm neither the author of Junius nor the man in the mask, for my name, I believe, is Robert Jones, and I was born somewhere in the city of Fumfudge. The first action of my life was the taking hold of my nose with both hands. My mother saw this and called me a genius. My father wept for joy and presented me with a treatise on nosology, and this I mastered before I was breeched. I now began to feel my way into science, and soon came to understand that, provided a man had a nose sufficiently conspicuous, he might, by merely following it, arrive at a lionship. But my attention was not confined to theories alone. Every morning I gave my proboscis a couple of pulls and swallowed half a dozen drams. When I came of age, my father asked me one day if I would step with him into his study. "My son," he said when we were seated, "what is the chief end of your existence?" My father," I answered, "it is the study of nosology." "And what, Robert," he inquired, "is nosology?" "Sir," I said, "it is the science of noses." "And can you tell me," he demanded, "what is the meaning of a nose?" "A nose, my father," I replied, greatly softened, has been variously defined by about 1,000 different authors. Here I pulled out my watch. It is now noon or thereabouts. We shall have enough time to get through with them all before midnight. To commence, then, the nose, according to Bartholinus, is that protuberance, that bump, that excretion, that— "Will do, Robert," interrupted the good old gentleman. "I'm thunderstruck at the extent of your imaginary information. I am positively, upon my soul—" And here he closed his eyes and placed his hand upon his heart. "Come here." Here he took me by the arm. "Your education may now be considered as finished. It is high time that you scuffle yourself, and you can't do better thing than merely follow your nose. So, and here he kicked me down the stairs and out of the door. "So get out of my house, and God bless you." As I felt within the divine afflatus, I considered this accident rather fortunate than otherwise. I resolved to be guided by the paternal advice. I determined to follow my nose. I gave it a pull or two upon the spot, and I wrote a pamphlet on nosology forthwith. All Fumfud was in uproar. "Wonderful genius," said the Quarterly. "Superb physiologist," said the Westminster. "Clever fellow," said the Foreign. "Fine writer," said the Edinburgh. "Profound thinker," said the Dublin. "Great man," said Bentley. "Divine soul," said Fraser. "One of us," said Blackwood. "Who can he be?" said Mrs. Barbleu. "What can he be?" said big Miss Barbleu. "Where can he be?" said little Miss Barbleu. But I paid these people no attention whatever. I just stepped into the shop of an artist. The Duchess of my bless my soul was sitting for her portrait. The Marquise of so-and-so was holding the Duchess's poodle, and the Earl of this and that was flirting with her salts. And his Royal Highness of the Touch-Me-Not was leaning upon the back of her chair. I approached the artist and turned up my nose. "Oh, beautiful!" sighed her Grace. "Oh, my!" lisped the Marquise. "Oh, shocking!" groaned the Earl. "Oh, abominable!" growled his Royal Highness. "What will you take for it?" I asked the artist. "For his nose?" shouted her Grace. £1,000, said I, sitting down. £1,000? inquired the artist musingly. £1,000, said I. "Beautiful," said he, entranced. £1,000, said I. "Do you warrant it?" he asked, turning the nose to the light. "I do," I said, blowing it well. "Is it quite original?" he inquired, touching it with reverence. "Humph!" said I, twisting it to one side. "Has no copy been taken?" he demanded, surveying it through a microscope. "None," I said, turning it up. "Admirable!" he ejaculated, throwing quite off his guard by the beauty of the manoeuvre. £1,000, said I. £1,000, said he. "Precisely," said I. £1,000, said he. "Just so," said I. "You shall have them," said he. "But what a piece of virtue!" And so he drew me a cheque upon the spot and took a sketch of my nose. I engaged rooms in Jermyn Street and sent Her Majesty in the 99th edition of the Nosology with a portrait of the proboscis, and that sad little rake, the Prince of Wales, invited me to dinner. We were all lions and recherche. There was a modern Platonist. He quoted Porphyry Iamblichus, Plotinus Proclus, Heracles, Maximus Tyrius, and Syrianus. There was a human perfectibility man. He quoted Turgot, Price, Priestley, Condorcet, de Staël, and the ambitious student in health. There was Sir Positive Paradox. He observed that all fools were philosophers, and that all philosophers were fools. There was Aestheticus Ethics. He spoke of fire, unity, atoms, bipartisan, pre-existent soul, affinity and discord, primitive intelligence, and homoeria. There was a Theologus Theology. He talked of Eusebius and Arianus heresy and the Council of Nicaea, Puseyism and consubstantialism, Homousius and homoiosis. There was Fricassee from the Recherche de Cancer. He mentioned murton of red tongue, cauliflowers with velouté sauce, avile à la Saint-Méot, Paris à la Florentine, orange jellies en mosaics. There was Bibulus O'Bumper, he reached upon Latour and Mark Brunnan, upon Mossoge and Chemberton, upon Richebourg and Saint Georges, upon Houbrion, Leonville, au Médoc, au Baroque, et Prégnac, upon Grave, upon Sauternes, upon Lafitte, and upon Saint-Péray. He shook his head at the Clos de Vourget, and told with his eyes shut the difference between sherry and Amontillado. There was a Signor Tintino from Florence. He discoursed, I should say, of Cimabue, Arpino, Carpaccio, and Agostino, the gloom of Caravaggio, the amenity of Albano, and the colours of Titian, and the flowers of Rubens, and the wagers of Jan Steen. There was the president of the Fumfudge University. He was of opinion that the moon was called Bendis in Thrace, Bubastis in Egypt, Dian in Rome, and Artemis in Greece. There was a Grand Turk from Stamboul. He could not help thinking that the angels were horses, cocks, and bulls, that somebody in the 6th century had 70,000 heads, and that the earth was supported by a sky blue cow with an incalculable number of green horns. There was Delphinus Polyglot. He told us what had become of 83 lost tragedies of Aeschylus, of the 53 orations of Isaeus, of the 391 speeches of Olysses, and of the 108 treatises of Theophrastus, of the 8th book of the conic sections of Apollonius, of Pindar's hymn, and Dithyrambics, and the 45 tragedies of Homer Jr. There was Ferdinand Fitzfossillus Feldspar. He informed us all about internal fires and tertiary formations, about ediforms and fluidiforms and solid forms, about quartz and marl, about schist and schorl, about uh, gypsum and trap, about talc and calc, about blende and hornblende, about mica slate and pudding stone, about syenite and lepidolite, about hematite and tremolite, about antimony and chalcedony, about manganese and whatever you please. There was myself. I spoke of myself, or um, of myself, of myself. I spoke of myself, of nosology, of my pamphlet, and of myself. I turned up my nose and spoke of myself. Marvellous clever man, said the prince. Superb, said his guests, and the next morning her grace of bless my soul paid me a visit. Will you go to the almanac's pretty creature? She said, tapping me under the chin. Upon honour, I said. Nose and all? She asked. As I live, I replied. Here then is a card, my life. Shall I say you will be there? Dear Duchess, with all my heart. Sure no, but with all your nose. Every bit of it, my love, said I, and so I gave it a twist or two and find myself at Almack's. The rooms were crowded to suffocation. He's coming, said somebody on the staircase. He's coming, said somebody further up. He's coming, said somebody further still. He is come, exclaimed the Duchess. He is come, the little love, and seizing me firmly by both hands, she kissed me thrice upon the nose. A marked sensation immediately ensued. Diavolo! Cried Count Capriano tutti. Dios, guarda! Muttered Don Stiletto. Miltoneres! Ejaculated the Prince of de Grenouille. Tu son 1000 Teufel! growled the Elector of Blutendorf. It was not to be borne. I grew angry. I turned short upon Bluddenhoff. Sir, I said to him, you are a baboon. Sir, he replied after a pause, Donner und Blitzen. And this was all that could be desired. We exchanged cards. At Chalk Farm the next morning I shot off his nose and then called upon my friends. Bete, said the first. Fool, said the second. Dolt, said the third. Ass, said the fourth. Ninny, said the fifth. Noodle, said the sixth. Be off, said the seventh. At all this I felt mortified, and so called upon my father. Father, I asked, What is the chief end of my existence? My son, he replied, it is still the study of nosology, but in hitting the Elector upon the nose you have overshot your mark. You have a fine nose, it is true, but then Bludenduff has none. You are fudged, and he's become the hero of the day. I grant you that in Fumfudge the greatness of a lion is in proportion to the size of his proboscis, but tonight there is no competing with the lion who has no proboscis at all. Oh my goodness, my dears. You can't just shoot people's noses off, you're right. It just doesn't seem right, does it? Eh? Does not indeed. So, where are we at? Jade is on a good streak. Ziggy Stardust, good stuff. Dracomoney Vary, thank you. Savand Exit, thank you. Alopexel, lovely. Excuse me. And all those bits, Barbarian Hamster, and so on. Thank you for all that, guys. Not tonight. I will not show you the fishes. No. What was the moral of the story? Don't be such a dick. I'm not sure. A weird story, to be sure. To be sure. I think maybe the moral of that story is, well, lionizing is to kind of big up, isn't it? So it's not to take shit too seriously. I think is my take on it, but I don't know. Maybe or someone else has more of a take on that. Someone who's studied Poe, for instance. Nobody knows the moral. What's the message? I don't. I get. Don't be a dick. Yeah, I see. Yes, it's about the size of it. All right, dears. I'm awfully tired tonight, and it's been nice having you. And we'll be here every Wednesday from 9 o'clock. That is the plan. Assuming there aren't some kind of tech issues or anything else. And we'll see you on Saturday if you're cooking for Zurek. My Zakvas is bubbling away nicely. I'm quite interested in that, actually. Yeah. Both these houses, and I don't know what you're talking about. Please get rid of the Zakvas. There's a hype train coming. See you tomorrow, wind. Ooh, a hype train right at the end. Aren't these things kind of best done at the beginning? Oh my god. Thank more bits. Thank you, Jade. You're glad you're not intent to cook this one. I'm interested. I mean, I'll try most things once. Oscar Wilde said you should try everything once apart from Morris dancing and bestiality. It smells funny. It does. I don't think so. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think meth was around at the time, but cocaine and heroin were. You know, trying it once. What's going to happen? Is doing it too often that helps, and it doesn't does the harm. Humans can fly, but only once. Hot train is coming round the track. Hype train. Cool. Away! A hype train is coming my way. Oh, is anyone else streaming? Who's out there tonight? Dunny is. Shall we raid Dunny? Let's raid Dunny. Dunny, 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 Dunny. And it's okay. So I'm just checking how to spell it. That's basically math in its contract for. Okay, lovely. See, Saturday. So Saturday, very exciting. We've got the cooking stream, and then in the evening we've got Lords of Mistrals, and we got the old we got old Mark cramming, and we were Cramo drops to Moravia, which some people seem to be very excited about. Yeah. Okay. So how do we do this? / raid, and then we leave a space, and we go Sir Dunny. I remembered how to do this. Look at that. Getting better every time. Here we go. Misrule. Woo bye. Tech Dadzig. Chat. I know, but I wouldn't have got there if I wasn't. 30 viewers are getting ready to raid Sir Dunny in 6, 5, 4, 3. Are we ready? 2, 1, and raid. Now, we are launched for raid. Raid, 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 raid. Okay, we're over there, I think. What's going on? Raiders! That's it. We're in. He's locked into his game, though. He's not even looking. All right, bye, gang.